A child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. What is an example of this that you've seen or experienced firsthand? I used to be into amateur radio after a short stint in the Army Cadets. There was one guy in the East Midlands, UK, who was one of the adult instructors. He was always telling us about amateur radio and would hand out old/cheaper pieces of tech he'd tried out and wasn't keeping. Anyway, he was a little weird, overly friendly with adults, never had any bad vibes around the kids, and obviously had some social anxiety which he was compensating for. Personally, I suspect he was on the autistic spectrum, but who knows. After I left the cadets and went to uni, I stayed in touch on Facebook. We were in the same Facebook group for amateur radio hobbyists. He always liked to do things by the book and instilled in us the importance of being responsible and socially conscious with our radio use. He was the same on Facebook, reminding people that Mrs. Miggins on her £10 handset wouldn't know about transmission power and squelch, etc. He mentioned in passing to a new member the importance of only using the public unlicensed channels, kind of like CB radio and the US, on the correct, very low, power setting of half a watt. He mentioned it was because Mrs. Miggins trying to reach her kid in the next street wouldn't understand the idea that she could hear you, but couldn't reach you to ask you to be quiet a minute. He was correct here, and it's also a criminal offense to transmit at higher power on these frequencies, even though it's not enforced. Anyway, this got someone's back up, and he was kicked from the group for preaching. After unsuccessfully asking to be let back in, he set up a larger antenna in his back garden, set up a super fancy aerial atop it, with a 30-watt transmission system. This is really quite powerful. He now turns this on for several hours a day on whatever channels the radio club/group are using to teach them the importance of good etiquette. This means that nobody can use certain frequencies for hours at a time, as it just sounds like someone is having a one-way conversation on air. He could probably get arrested, but that doesn't seem to bother him at all. I worked in an office for a Fortune 500. One of our longtime team members, G, worked as a level 2 employee for quite a while. She was good enough to be a level 3 or level 4 employee, but never took the offer because she was a single mom, relied on public transportation, etc. Her friend, P, started at the same time she did, and was a level 3, working up to a level 4. P and G were all good, until P discovered that G made more than P, because she was constantly getting merit raises and performance bonuses. One day, G made an honest mistake. Our client just switched to a different protocol for billing, and she accidentally did it the old way. It was a no harm, no foul situation, but P went to the level 4 employees and senior management, and suggested that G be fired. They all went to ours who said that, while there was no valid reason to fire her, they could move her to a shittier team that would basically guarantee her failure. G realized what was happening, and secured another job. We were going to be off for 4 days for Christmas, and G quit Thursday by leaving an after hours voicemail. G knew that the message wouldn't be received until Monday morning, so she sent out an email to the entire building, time to be sent at 11:59 Christmas Eve. The email detailed how P was having an affair with her Bill while her husband was deployed, how one senior manager took this job because he was fired for embezzlement and lost his CPA license, and how one of our male level 3 employees requested a transfer because our married department manager was sexually harassing him. We got in at 8 hours and it got in at 9. It was a shit show Monday morning. Quite a few people quit that day, and to think, it all could have been avoided. I work with kids who have mental health issues. Many of them have attempted suicide, ran away, self-harm, or have an addiction of some kind by their mid-teens. They always have some kind of traumatic family life that's pushed them to that problem. One thing we see again and again is the poor kid who comes in after the parent/guardian has belittled them and told them what a piece of garbage they are for years. Eventually the kid starts acting out, which the adult uses as proof that he/she was right all along about the kid being an awful piece of shit. One kid I worked with was in and out of treatment programs for a couple of years and had exactly this kind of parents. Father was always on the road driving a truck and checked out when he was at home. Mom was personality disordered and extremely emotionally and verbally abusive. One day, while his father was on the road, this boy murdered his mother by bludgeoning her to death with a hammer while she slept in. Then he kept her body in the house for a few days, abusing the corpse before stuffing her remains into the trash can and leaving them on the curbside for pickup. This could be applied to my soon-to-be ex-husband. He has mommy issues. He has daddy issues. He has sibling issues. Basically, his parents divorced when he was in grade school and no one really ever parented him from that point forward. His dad left. His mom, in my opinion, has no sense of accountability and can never be wrong about anything, so not exactly a great role model. She restarted her career after the divorce and left him in the dust. My husband never really healed from the aftermath of his parents' divorce. I can understand. My own parents' divorce negatively affects me to this day in some ways. Though my parents are the polar opposite of his. They are extremely involved and giving. I think the more my parents involved themselves in our lives, the more he realized what a parent was supposed to look like. When our baby was born, and my parents worked to be helpful and bond with him, I think it almost showed a giant magnifying glass on the abandonment issues he had buried and run from his whole life. He cracked this year, ran away with someone, threw me and my loving family away, but, briefly, got the attention he was yearning for from both his shitty absentee parents and his time of crisis. That didn't last too long. He burnt our marriage and the life we had built over 10 plus years to the ground. He felt so sad and wanted me to feel as badly as he did, though any warmth he enjoyed from doing so quickly dissipated. He regrets everything. Update: we have been separated for months, but within the past 6 weeks he's been trying to open the door. I've been patient with him and encouraging while he tries to find the right specialists. He called me tonight to tell me he's back with her, so I guess he doesn't really regret anything. I need to redact that last sentence, wouldn't want to be inaccurate. And just FYI, I was still in denial about having to get a divorce. It's stupid, but I wanted to work through some of this, even if we couldn't stay married through therapy. Hold me accountable, Reddit. I'm 100% done. Saw this happen with my lit brother. He has autism, and even though he was diagnosed around the age of 8, a lot of people didn't know how to deal with him, or didn't want to take the effort to learn how to deal with him. This includes teachers, other children's parents, and even one of our grandmothers. What made it even worse is that I was a child prodigy who would get nothing but amazing grades and started getting into art at a very young age and being really good at it. I got all the praise, had he basically got nothing. My parents didn't do this on purpose. I would steal the spotlight. So he just started getting in trouble, just so he would get any attention. He started fires, vandalized stuff, and even from a young age he would go to the main road to throw rocks at cars and such. If he didn't get caught, he would tell my parents what he did himself. There's actually a video of him at my birthday where he told our mom he wanted to show her something, only to flip over a very large container of laundry detergent when she arrived with the camera. He's 25 now, and thankfully he has a really nice girlfriend that actually helps him get over the whole negative attention is also attention thing. My uncle. He was always the black sheep of the family, but turned out he had been carefully planning his future from the start. He got a full ride to his dream college, got a really well-paying job, got married, and now has a child who is a few months old. My grandparents, his parents, always thought he was a disappointment as he was their only son. He knew this, and they verbally abused him for a while about how he never lived up to their expectations. Turns out, his parents, and all 4 of his sisters ran themselves into quite a bit of debt, and he only found out as he was nearly done with college. They came to my uncle for help after he found employment, and he basically gave my whole family the finger and said for them to help themselves. I'm literally the only one of any of my cousins or siblings who bothered contacting him years after this whole ordeal. At the time I was too young to understand what the fuck was happening, let alone travel by myself. So I contact him via Facebook Messenger, and his wife is a lovely woman. His daughter is so cute and gorgeous, and he is still the same strong, kind-hearted man that I remember. My parents know I'm on contact with him, and they just don't care. I'll be staying over at their house for a little while next week, and I'm so glad I was able to meet my little cousin. I guess I would maybe count to this. I cut my relatives out of my life when I was 19, They had spent my life tormenting me and treating me like dirt. With me gone, there's my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, and my dad. My dad being the youngest at 58 years old now. No younger generation to take care of them. My aunt would be prepared for that, but my dad and my grandmother were banking all their hopes on me caring for them in their old age. So much so they would make fun of me for how incapable I was of domestic tasks. For example, I didn't learn how to use a washing machine until I googled it at 19, but when I asked them to show me, they always made excuses. Your school should be teaching you that. You should know how to do that. Figure it out. I'll show you some other time. They never would show me though. They liked having evidence of what a horrible, incompetent, and lazy person they saw me as. They also didn't want me to be able to live independently because that would make it easier for me to move out, which would mean I wouldn't be at their immediate use. I also lied and said that I was required to live on campus for the first year. When I went to university, I wasn't planning to cut contact yet, but I was desperate for a taste of independence. My aunt gave me my birthday money early so that I could afford the deposit. I felt awful because my aunt was actually the only one who had ever stood up for me, but keeping in contact with her would have been too complicated, and I'm certain she would have put some pressure on me to mend things with the others. Not even a month after I moved into my student accommodation, I got into an argument with my dad and finally stood up for myself. I cut contact, and with that I was expecting to become homeless once finished my first year and my lease finished. I was too mentally ill to complete my studies and hold down a job at the same time. As luck would have it, everything turned out fine. A lot of bumps in the road, but I graduated, didn't end up homeless, and I'm now working in the healthcare system. I don't exactly regret cutting contact, but I'll admit I should have done some research on my options for homelessness instead of hoping for the best. I nearly destroyed my life. Kid went to school. He was in special behavioral classes and then was put into our class in 4th grade. My teacher was hard on him. One day, the kid had a tantrum and threw a chair. He was sent back to the special classes, which probably destroyed him. He continued on and in high school was one of the freaks. Always wore a trench coat, in Texas, mind you, was into nerdy things. I talked to him sometimes, but wouldn't really call him a friend, more just nice to him. He would be reading a Reddet book, and we chat about that being my uncle got me into RPGs. In 11th grade, school went into lockdown for some unknown reason. Found out he committed suicide in one of the school bathrooms. Heard he wrote letters to faculty and friends prior to doing it. I did this to my last job as a rehab tech in a nursing home. I was treated poorly after a couple of months. My workload was literally doubled, and I was never listened to about my concerns. I begged them to hire a second tech, even part-time, just so I can breathe and have my mental state not be ruined. They always told me no, and then piled on more work. Got mad at me when patients weren't complying, ran me around like a dog for hours, cut my lunch hour for no reason, and refused to give me any sort of pay raise when minimum wage went up. I was at my wit's end and everyone but my manager and the therapists could see it. I also experienced a privacy violation that I wish I reported to ours. I was basically forced to tell my manager why I needed to take a day off and for what the medical procedure I was getting was for. Another instance, I was told I was back quote clearly gaining weight by one of the therapists and my manager, and then they laughed about it. I was so pissed off that I put in my 2 weeks, but I could barely make it past 2 more days. After one god awful busy morning, I packed up my stuff during my break, clocked out, and went home. I sent a text to my manager saying I won't be coming back, and I blocked her. I felt bad doing it, but I had nurses and aides telling me to quit BC. They saw how miserable I was. About a week or so later they went into lockdown BC of COVID. My brother. My family wasn't loving. I coped it with my venturing out and exploring on my own. I would leaving early each day and explore nature, only coming home for food. My brother coped with the lack of love with sex, drugs, fighting, parties, and theft. He had a super distorted view of needing love and he really acted like if he wasn't getting love, then the world deserved to burn. He went into prison in his teens. He got out in his 20s, tried to be good for a year, but couldn't find his concept of love, so he started burning the village again, went back in, got out years later, tried to go clean, and this time found love. But he pushed himself too hard to be lovable. He developed a super personality built on meth. He did drugs to keep up, lost his love, and started to burn the village down again. The last time, the local sheriffs ended the cycle. He wasn't going back in. During the road chase, they filled his windshield with bullets and he veered off a cliff and died in the dirt. It was the headline of the local news. I think I may forever compare my life to my brother's. How could we be so different? We had the same parents and endured very similar pains. But I didn't choose to burn down the village. I chose to distance myself and survive. He went nuclear. The village didn't have a chance. I'm burning down my community right now. That is, my neighbors are fucking with me, trying to weaponize the bylaws of our HOA to construct a spiteful road on my property for their driveway. Fire safety they call it. $25,000 in unnecessary legal expenses, I call it. So I'll let my HOA know that, if they allow this, don't stand up forcefully for me in court, then I will use that same power to demand a 60-foot road down the entire HOA, literally forcing neighbors I don't know to move their homes. I'm being treated poorly, feel unwelcome in my new village, so I'm enforcing my rights and burning down the neighborhood. It will cost 25 landowners $1 million to make up for fucking with me. Some may literally lose their homes, and afterwards their property values will be much lower. But I told them what would happen if they did not support me, gave them a chance.